All right, so if you recall from class, we were working on a Tic Tac Toe project. And let Visual Studio start up. If you recall, we had the basic form done, and these are just simple buttons that will allow us to click. And obviously right now I've got the text set to the X just to see what it looks like. But as you know, we changed it so that when it loaded, it would load the values from the array onto these buttons, and then we had changed it so far so that if you hit a button, it would change it to X, and that's all we did so far. And the way we're doing this, excuse me, is there we go. We have got this values array, which currently holds simply spaces, and then we had used this method. We created this method which would take each value in that array and put it to the corresponding button, so that as it changed, and here all we did as it changed, we would change the value of the corresponding item in the array, sort of a parallel arrays idea, and then it would call update view in each of these click events. And so what that would do was take the array and put it to the screen. So that's what we had done so far. But of course, if you were going to play a game, now you could have it so it switched back and forth between two users. We're just going to have a simple, computer operated game, so that you will select an X and then the computer will put an O on the board. The next thing we might like is after we do a click event and you update the board with your X, we want the computer to create a move. So let's go ahead and create a method. All right. It doesn't need any parameters, but what is it missing up here? The return type. Well, we're not going to return anything because we're just going to adjust the array, right? We're going to adjust our array with a new character. So the first thing we have to do is choose values, right? So, all right, McAfee. We have to choose some values. So to do that, we're going to have to generate some random numbers. So it might be nice to generate a random number between two random numbers between 0, 1, or 2, right? So how would I do that? Well, if you're not sure, and this is one of the skills you really want to start working on, is go find out. So So we're going to just go out there and do some Google foo. And again, you're not looking for a full listing. You don't want to take a full listing of code, but as long as you can get an example either from the MSDN or the or another site like Stacked Overflow, that's fine. It's not. There we go. There we go, Stack Overflow. So you might find an example. And this seems like it's pretty reasonable for us, right? So you can see it's using this random class, and then it's going to say this random integer equals r next 0 to 100. And most languages have something like this. They'll have some sort of class. So let's see, int. Sometimes we can do this in one fell swoop. Let's see, random. We'll call it, well, let's go row. We'll call one row and one column, right? Because we're going to have two. Random. Sometimes you can do stuff like this. Next, let's see. Say, I have to go back to the example again, quick. Next. So it was next. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating this new object, but I'm actually not going to name a variable for it. You see this sometimes. And then generates a random non-negative number. That's one example. The max value. So the exclusive upper bound of the random number to be generated, max value must be greater than or equal to 0. So this might be nice for us because we want a 0, 1, or 2. So we actually could put in 3 here maybe. And remember our semicolon. And so now I've randomly chosen a row or column, and what I want to do is, just like I did with the with these guys, is I want to randomly place in the row in the column not an X but an O, right? Now, well, let's try this out. So we have to call this method someplace. So let's go ahead and call this down here in the 0, 0 position, right? So we'll only call it there. And notice that I'm calling it before I actually update the view, which means the X and O will show up kind of simultaneously. If you wanted to put a pause in there, that would be certainly a possibility. So I could do something like this. I would take the update view up here, update it after that. Then I would have to create some sort of pause here. Well, do I know how to create a pause? So this is very slow. So sleep is used in multi-threaded applications, which you don't really know about yet. So we could do a thread sleep, which I think will work. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd rather just do there's a simple pause. I'll try. Let's see. I need to have the threading, the using threading, and ThreadSleep. So this is this is a namespace. So this is including another namespace in your code, And if you see up at the top here, it does have threading tasks. I wonder. So back down here, let's see. Thread. We'll just put it to sleep for, so how many milliseconds? Let's say 5,000 milliseconds, which should be about 5 seconds. So hopefully what that means, what happens is, we place the X, we update the view to include the X, we then put the thread, this thread, which is the form, to sleep for about 5 seconds. Then it comes back awake and does the computer move, which will randomly generate a move and place not, well, placing a 0, we should place an O. Right? All right, and then we update the view. Let's see. Now, the only button I've changed for this is this button here. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it did do it, but you notice it actually chose the same space. I wonder if I do it again, it will change the same space. Because one of the things I didn't do with my random choice is I did not prevent it from choosing the same square, you know. So this could actually choose the same square and therefore overwrite the original X. Also seems to be a little quirky to me. Let's take a look. We'll get rid of the sleep for a second there, and let's try this again. Meaning that the... all right. Meaning that the... there we go. So that's what I expected to see, right? If I click it again, I might see another O pop up. I didn't. There we go. So we can get some O's popping up randomly on the screen. Okay. So what you're seeing is that for each X is placed a row. But what I haven't done is made sure that the row in the column hasn't already been used. So my random computer move is somewhat dangerous because it could overwrite an already existing X. So what I need to do is actually keep doing this while the row and column that I've generated don't already have a value. So they should have the space, I'm looking for a value here, a row and column value that actually equals the empty space, right? So while is not equal to space, I'm going to keep looping, and I'm going to need these guys again, right? Let me ask you something. What would be another way I might be able to do this loop without having to have this twice like this? Is there another form of loop that I might be able to always run at least once? Now think about that. What could I do? Like this down here. Right, and then a semicolon, and then I could do int there, int there. Now this will cause an error, right? Compile error because it's already declared those. Let's get rid of them. Let's see. Oh, it's outside the... I think I have to declare them outside the... Let's see, and then I can't redeclare those, right? That's a scoping issue. So now I'm using a DoWhile loop instead, and so what this will do is it'll come in here, declare these two variables, set aside those spaces. It will generate these two. It will check to see if I have already got an X or an O in that spot, and if I do, it will keep looping until it finds a row and column where I have a space. So it's going to keep looping until it finds a row column option that is a space. And then once it drops out of the loop, it'll set that space to an O, which means I should no longer have the problem that it actually overwrites something, right? It's very slow. Let's see if we can get it rolling. Here we go. All right, so if I click here, again, I've only done this for the upper left-hand button, XO. If I click it again, and you can see it is going to fill up the entire screen. Now the danger is, if I click it one more time, it'll take that spot. If I click it again, you can try this on your own, but if I do that, what will happen is there will never be a spot available, right? So that means I shouldn't call this when there are no spaces available, because if I do, this will be an infinite loop. So be wary, be aware of that. Okay, so, but the other thing I'm not really doing here is that I should only do, right? I should only allow this if I don't already have, if I have a space in that, in the value 0, 0. So what I should also do in here is that if values is equal to the space character, I can go ahead and do this, right? I'll update it to be an X, because that means it was empty. If it was not empty, I shouldn't let the player just overwrite what was there. That would be sort of rude, right? It means he could just barge over whatever was there. Now, what you're starting to see is this is getting sort of long, right? I'm starting to have a lot of operations I have to do in it. And I'm going to have to redo this for all of my X's, all of my buttons, right? So maybe I could create a method for that. I could go ahead and create a little short method that actually will do these operations for me. So, and as long as so this is going to be like PlayerTurn sort of thing, maybe. You call it PlayerTurn with a lowercase p for the. Okay, but ask yourself this: what would the PlayerTurn method need to do its job? So if you look at this, if I wanted to make this work for any one of the clicks, that is, take this code up here, what would need to change for each one of the buttons? Now, see these zeros here? That would not be good. So what I need is, I need to know the row and the column. So I can change these to row and column to make it generic. For this guy. And now I have something that I can call from each one of the buttons. And then I can mess around with it instead of having to update all of those all the time as I change the, right? So what I do down here is I'll take this and replace this code here, right? And the row will be 0. It's the corresponding position of this button. And then the column will be 0, and I'll finish the line with the semicolon. So I could go ahead and put that same bit of code in all the buttons, but before I do that, maybe I should just test that one out, see if it operates the same way. All right. And notice that now, when I'm clicking on this button, it's not adding other O's, excuse me. And the reason is that if you go back and recall the code, it's only going to let these things happen if I was clicking on a button when it makes the call, clicking on a button that hadn't already been updated, right? Didn't get an X or an O. So now, let's go ahead and update the other buttons. Right, now as I go, I want to be careful and pay attention to what I'm doing. Right, 0, 0. This will be 0, 1. Right. This will be 0, 2. Because we want to match the row and column of the actual button. You know, and this is matching our array. A little scrolling problems here. So this will be 1, 1 because it matches up the click for 1, 1. This will be 1, 2. Right? And then this one will be 2, 0. And I have kind of these two flip-flop a little bit, but my naming convention is helping me out here, right? Because this is 2, 2, so, and this one's 2, 1, so they're sort of backwards, but that really doesn't affect how they run at all. So now I've added that to all the buttons, so if I go back and start this, what I should see is that when I click, it should add an O, click, add an O, click, add an O, click, add an O. Oh, look, I lost. It won. The computer's taking over. Okay. Click. Looks like I like that. I think. All right, we'll see what. Not sure what went on there. We're not there yet, but. So we've got it to be able to go back and forth between the player and the computer. We've got this computer move. It looks like sort of working. But what we don't do is we don't check to see if someone has won. So in here, we should check to see if the player won, and then check to see if the computer won. Right? So. And maybe we could create a method to do that. Right. Now remember, the data for this is all stored in our values array. So we just have to, let's see, and we want to check win. So maybe if we're going to say check win, maybe we should actually return a value like a Boolean value, which will, Google, getting my Java thing going here. Oh, now it's complaining because not all pass return a value, right? So, so I'll go down here and I'll say return run, as Shaggy says, or so Scooby. So automatic return false. So what would constitute a win, thinking about my values array? So again, I'm going to make a decision here. So So if the values if the values equals so I want to check to see if values is equal to value 0, 0 is equal to 0, 1, right? And I also would like to see if values equals 0, 2. That would mean that the first one equals the second one. If you look at the form, right? By the first one, I mean this one equals this one, and this one equals this one. If both those things are true, that means that the player just won. Now, if I think about this, it turns out that I need to do that for all 3 rows, right? I need the same thing for 0, 1, and 2. So I could do that individually. You know, I could do it one at a time, or I might be a little slick and be able to do it as a loop. Excuse me. And as long as row is less than 3, 0, 1, 2 is the size of my array, right? 0, 1, 2. And then I'll do row plus plus, right? Oh, excuse me. So that would mean it will put this all in a little loop here, right? Indent a little. So if this is true, I should return true. Unless there we go. Unless I'm going to turn into Scooby-Doo, I have to learn how to spell return. So, but now, instead of the 0, what I want there is row, right? Which means it will, for all 3 rows, it will do this same comparison. And if any one of them comes up true, that is, the 2 values match, the first value matches the second value, and the first value matches the third value, then it will return true. Do I have to check to see if the middle value equals the third value? And I'll let you think about that. So, so this works for the rows. Could I do the same thing for the columns? Could I have the same sort of little thing for the columns, right? And notice, I'm not worried about if it's false, because it's going to do these 2 loops, and if it doesn't return true at any point, it will come to the bottom and return false. But now, of course, I want this to be the column. Right? And now this, I want to change back to 0, 1, 0, 2, and now the second value I will have be the column, right? Because that's the column value. There we go. So now I'm going to check the three columns to see if I have a winner, right? Now, and we're not going to worry about the diagonals yet. We'll just do the rows and the columns for now. But now I should actually call this method. Right? If Now I should only have to do, I'm going to do this separately, right? I'll do one check win for the player and one check win for the computer. And that's because once I make a move, once I change something, if I check for a win, it should find it there, and the only one it should be is the player. It shouldn't be able to find a computer win because I would have checked the computer win down here on the previous time I did a turn. So the last time the computer made a move, if it won, it should have updated that. But I don't have a way to indicate that. So let's go ahead and maybe add a label. I can see the label. We'll change the back color. And we will make this auto size false, just so it's easier for us to see for the moment. And this is just, you know, choices on your own about how you want it to look. I don't know where the middle is. Oh, that's what I should do. I should make this the same width, right? There. That makes sense, right? And then I'm not going to worry too much about that, the form of that. But so that was, I think, label 1. So what I'll do here is label 1 dot text right. Now hopefully we can test that pretty easily, because the computer has not been really designed to be very good at its job. We just kind of had it randomly picking positions. So it probably will lose pretty quickly to us, but let's go ahead and try. We still have a couple more problems to fix, but we're moving along here. So X, let's try here. Oh, it blocked us. Oh, it said computer wins. That's interesting. Let's try that again. Maybe our logic is off. Oh, I know what we did wrong. Okay. When we did a check win, we need to make sure that we actually check to see a specific character. We have to check for a specific character. I was going to try to do it the easy way, and either one it would be the same, but I actually can do a check on a character here. The reason is because at the beginning I have all spaces, so then the space will match this space, and this space will match this space, which means immediately someone wins. Unfortunately, spaces shouldn't. I mean, what I could also do is add. I could add another little conditional here that says, as long as. Oops, not what I wanted to do. Undo. As long as. Oh, again. I must not have copied that line. I could add another little check here to make sure that that this character is not a space. So as long as the row 0 is not a space and I get the 2 matches, then I'm okay. And then the same thing down here. So copy this over here, right? And I'm gonna clean up my code a little bit too here. So to see this a little easier, I can move this down to another line. Just go to that spot and hit enter. That way it doesn't make my line really long and hard to read when I go to do my coding, or someone else comes in to see what I'm doing. So hopefully now this is only going to fire, this only return true if the X's these were X's or they were O's. So if it was a space, it shouldn't do that. So let's see if we can. So label 1 has stayed the way it was. And it says computer wins. Did I thought we won. Let's see, who did I have win? If the X check win. Oh, that is because if this check wins, so if this check win is hit, what should I do? Should I keep doing that? So the truth is that I only want to do this second step if check win, that is check win return false. So if check win return false, then I'll go ahead and do this code, because I don't want it to run if the player won. You know, if he's already won, then I let the computer move, and then the computer wins on the second move, which is exactly why I had to have 2 check wins. You know, had to have them separate, but then I allowed it to slip through. All right, so let's try this again. All right, so I get X, player wins. All right, now one of the things that I should do is lock out the board if the player wins or the computer wins, and then force them to restart. So I could have a restart button. So I could do something like so. I'll let you to figure out how to make an exit button. I'll change this maybe. Something like that. All right, and I'll double click on this. So when it restarts, what I really want to have happen is I want this array to go back to the state it was in, right? So so how would I do that? What would I do to get the values to go back the way they were? Well, so I could use a little for loop with the row. I could get a row, and I'm going to start at 0 because my index starts, my array starts at 0, right? The first index is at 0, and then I'll make sure that row stays less than 3, because the biggest index I have is 2 because of the size of my square, and then I'll do row plus plus. Now I could also do an inner loop, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to set values row comma 0 equal to the space, right? And then I could have an inner loop, but I'm not going to go to that trouble. I'll just go ahead and actually 1, 2 right there. So now that should wipe out the values in all the row 0, 1, and 2, and then column 1, column 0, column 1, and column 2 at the same time. So it should go down each row and wipe it out and replace it with spaces to put it back to that initial state. But then, of course, I have to then go ahead and update the view. So Now if I run this, I click X. Oh, I've got my... if I click restart now, it should wipe this out. Oh, that's good. I've clicked that one like that. That's bad things will happen. Because I still haven't fixed one of the problems I have, which is once I get to once the array is full, that is, there are no spaces left. So I probably should be keeping track of how many moves have been made. I'm going to start with 0. And moves, what kind of thing should moves be? I'm going to make it an int, because it's a count, it's just going to count 1, 2, 3. So then I can, each time the player makes a move in my player turn, I will go ahead and increase moves. And then I also only want to do this code I particularly am concerned about the computer move code. Else if moves is less than 9. Oops, not greater than 9, less than 9. So, because once it gets to 9, that means it should be full. So I don't want to do this computer move if the screen is full. That will not work. I also probably shouldn't be in here, but it turns out that this is gonna take care of that anyway, because X can't possibly move. If I click here, I could check the moves, but it's already going to check to make sure that there was a valid position. However, what I may want to do is do something down here that will take care of that. That is, indicate that we got to 9 and it was a tie. Because that means if I'm here, that means the player didn't win, and the moves was greater than 9. So it went down here and said it's a tie. All right, so let's see if I can keep it a tie. Oh, I won. Damn it. I was trying not to win. But the computer was crafty. He was onto me, so he forced me to win. Let's try again. And, let's see. I'll try to go here. No, I'm not checking diagonals yet, so I'll go here and I won't win. Okay, so I want to make sure I don't win, so I'll go here. And then there. Still says player. Oh, I still won. I'm not paying attention to my winning possibilities. All right, let's see if I can manage a tie. It's trickier than I thought it would be. All right, so I don't want him to go there. Oh, something didn't work. It's not happy about something. All right, we'll stop that. Must not have gotten my, let's see, moves. Moves less than 9. I did set moves to 0, right? moves equals 0, and then each time the player turn, I increase moves. And then else if moves is less than 9. Let's see. Let's try this. I'll just say if the moves is greater than equal to 9. It should never get greater than, but you know, be super cautious. Let's try this again. So now I've separated it from that conditional, and if the moves is greater than 9, it's going to automatically say greater than or equal to 9. It's only going to set that to a tie. Let's try to, all that trouble I had trying to set a tie up. Let's see. There. Let's see. Not seeing it. Doesn't like something. So we will run it again. That was odd. Player wins, right? Oh, the player wins. That's definitely a problem. Okay, so I need to fix that too. That is, once somebody wins, oh, that's right, I said that. I said once somebody wins, I should lock the controls, right? I should have a method to lock all the controls, except the restart button. So it will probably be something similar to this guy here. I'll lock the buttons. And I'm going to give it a Boolean value, whether I want it locked or unlocked, active or inactive. Right? Oh, sorry. But now I want this to be not the text. What I want to do is change the whether it is active or not, whether this control is enabled. So if it's enabled, I'll set, well, I'll just, that way what I can do is I can use this same method to either lock it or unlock it, depends on what value I pass in, right? So, and then I will change all of these to that. Oops, I got an extra dot there, huh? I'll do it again. So now I can call this lock button, which will lock each one of my little buttons if the if we're going to return true here. That will be slick. We'll do it there. Maybe over complicating things, but we'll see. If it returns true here, it's going to say go ahead and lock down these buttons. We don't want to play anymore because somebody just won the game. So it'll lock the buttons now. But what it means is that when I do my restart, I'm going to want to also call lock button. Ooh, I don't know, I'm doing it backwards. I want to set enable to true, and then up there I want to set enable to false. Sorry about that. So now that means if I win, I want to disable all the buttons. I'll set enabled to false. So if I came up to the conditions where I had enough matches to win, I'll set the enable to false. And then if I want to play again, I have to unlock those buttons. I set enabled to true. So if I win, see that? All these buttons are now locked. And if I hit restart, the buttons are unlocked again. They go locked again. We're not doing a good job of showing that, but that's okay. We'll let you mess around with that if you want. Then that's about it. You know, we still had that one little... we're not really having it... We'll not worry about having it look like the computer's thinking, because it's really not. Oh, and we wanted to check to see if we'd solved the problem with the tie. Right. Uh-oh. And we haven't. Huh. Interesting. Let's see. See if I can set a breakpoint here. I'll set a breakpoint and try to... Alright, it's not letting me do that. Let me start this again. This is greater than or equal to... Ooh, that's another thing I didn't do. Did I reset the moves down here? I didn't. So moves equals 0. Need to make sure I do that. Right? When I restart the game, the move should reset to 0. So let's go back up here. So if I check win, player wins. If he doesn't win, I want to go ahead and do the computer move, but only if moves is less than 9. But if I end up with moves being 9, greater than or equal to 9, I should write tie on the label. Oh, yeah, well that's because I'm kind of being silly. So the player moves, and then the computer moves. Right. So we were always shy on moves. Let's try this again. That was our bug. The player moved, the computer moves. Let's see here. Oh, I don't want to go there. Let's try there. Tie. All right. I think that's everything. Now, I didn't do the diagonals. So let's take a close look at that. So you notice moves and moves. Right? That way it's counting up to 9, right? It's counting up to a full set of squares. I could have also written a method that checked to see if all the squares were full, if my array had no spaces in it. So I could have also created a little, instead of counting, I could have just walked the array and said, are there no spaces open? That would have worked as well. So that's about it. The one thing that I'll leave for you, if you want to do it, is you can work out how to have diagonals checked. Right? So how do we have the diagonals checked? Let's see, the update to view. There's the update to view. I'll leave this on the screen for a moment. Then there's the locking of the buttons, which basically what we're doing is if somebody won the game, we want to disable the buttons. So we'll return in false here, and it will disable all the buttons. If we're resetting the game or restarting, we're going to pass in true, and it will re-enable all the buttons. This is the form load method, which will update the view as soon as it comes in. And remember, the array is initialized to all spaces, so it puts spaces on all the buttons. This is the computer move, so we're using that do loop, which will randomly choose moves as long as it will keep looping until it finds an open spot, something with a space. Now, we probably should do something to put a check in this to make sure there's actually a space available. We could have, run through and verified that here. I'll leave that to you. That is, you could check, you could go through values, every single row, and check to make sure there's some space in it. Then we did a check win, which is checking the rows to see if there's any row that's got O's or X's, a complete line. Does the same thing for columns. It does not do diagonals. So here you could add a little check to see if 0, 0 equals 1, 0, and 0, 0 equals 2, 2. You do the same sort of thing, and you could do for both diagonals. I leave that to you. And here's the player turn, which is doing the bulk of our work, right? First it's saying, is this button that just got clicked, is it providing me a row and column that hasn't already been selected? So it's not going to let you overwrite an O or overwrite an X. It's going to increase the moves so we can count if we're done or not. And then the values, it will set that to an X. It will do an update of the view. That is, we just changed the array, but now it's going to actually put all the array items out to the screen, to the correct position on the buttons. And it's going to check the win, call that other method, and say, hey, did anyone win? In this case, we're really looking at player because he's the one who just changed. Then we will check, we'll do a computer move if there's a spot available for the computer to move, right? If the moves is less than 9. Otherwise, this would get stuck, right? When we go ahead and call computer move, this would be an endless loop. Then we increase the moves. We update the move just like we did here. That is, the computer move had changed the array, and now we want to put it out to the screen. And we go ahead and check to see if someone won. In this case, of course, we're checking because the computer just did his move, so if somebody won, it was definitely the computer. And then we could check to see if we've actually run out of moves. If we're out of moves, we should hit tie. And oh, that's another thing. If we tie, we should lock the buttons, right? Otherwise, well, it would be okay. It'd actually be okay because it's not going to let you overwrite anything. So effectively, it's done. But for consistency, you could do this, and say we're locking the buttons down, so it's not going to run any code anymore until you restart. And then here are the buttons all calling player turn, which is all the same kind of code, which is nice because now we can change player turn and we don't have to update a whole bunch of different methods. And finally, this is the restart, which we go ahead, we clear the original array values and put spaces out into every single row and column, the 9 positions. We update the view to blank out all the text on the buttons, and then we unlock all the buttons and reset moves to 0. So that's it. So I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. You can go ahead and mess around with changing the artificial intelligence if you want, and you can work on the diagonals.